On March 19th, 2019, Mike Trout made a decision that would leave the baseball world in shock. He signed a deal that would make him the richest man in the land, but he also signed a deal that would rob baseball fans, sports fans in general, MLB, and ironically himself, the likely chance of seeing him compete not only on a great team one day, but also in the postseason regularly. This isn't an episode bashing Mike Trout or even the Angels. This is an attempt to make sense of the absurdity of the Mike Trout situation. And if we're going to do this right, we're going to have to start at the beginning, because Mike Trout's decision to stay with the Angels for the rest of his storied career wasn't about money. It was about loyalty. Many fans may think that Mike Trout was drafted as the number one pick in the 2009 draft, and while that assumption is 100% logical, it simply isn't correct. Mike Trout was passed up 24 times in the first round before he was inevitably chosen by the Angels. Insane, I know. It's just that most teams had no idea that arguably the future greatest baseball player of all time was sitting, waiting for his dream to become a reality. It's eerily similar to how Aaron Rodgers was drafted. Also, listen to the guys drafted above him: Randall Grichuk, Kyle Gibson, AJ Pollock, Mike Leake, Mike Minor, Zach Wheeler, Dustin Ackley, and Steven Strasburg. Aside from Strasburg and maybe possibly Wheeler, being that he was also a big pitching prospect, it's wild to imagine those other guys being chosen over Trout as a prospect. Fast forwards 3 years and Mike Trout breaks onto the scene in his first full year and leaves the baseball world speechless. He batted .326, had 182 hits, 49 stolen bases, 129 runs, which, let me point out, are still his season highs for a single season, and had an OPS of .963. He also was robbing home runs with spectacular catches and gave the Angels a dynamite rookie that potentially could have done damage in the postseason that year. Now, I mentioned that with purpose, as the Angels narrowly missed the wild card that year. Between 2011 and 2015, the Angels had winning records 4 out of 5 years, nearly won 100 games in 2014, and made the postseason that year. The franchise had made big moves in the early 2010s, including adding former All-Star CJ Wilson to their rotation, and also adding former MVPs Josh Hamilton and Albert Pujols. On paper at the time, a rotation consisting of Jared Weaver, Dan Herron, and CJ Wilson, and a lineup with Trout, Hamilton, and Pujols was considered destined to make multiple postseasons. On paper, management was making all the right moves, but underneath it all, the franchise had already begun to implode. Josh Hamilton was never what he was in Arlington, and pretty much became a drama case during his time in Anaheim. He battled numerous injuries and had issues off the field. Jared Weaver carried the rotation as an ace until he no longer physically could. 2014 was his last solid year. CJ Wilson had 3 good years but retired after the 2015 season. Dan Herron's last ace year was 2011, which was the only fantastic year that he had with the Angels. The Angels rotation has since been unable to provide an even reasonably formidable rotation since Weaver, Herron, and Wilson. And then there's Albert Pujols and the atrocity that was his signing. While the Mike Trout extension made sense for the Angels, the Pujols signing seemed like a signing made by an uneducated fan instead of by a baseball executive. Needless to say, the money spent on Pujols has, is, and will continue to haunt Anaheim. While all those major roster points have a lot to deal with why Anaheim wasn't and hasn't been able to replicate their 2014 90-plus win season, it isn't the biggest reason. The biggest reason why the Angels have all but completely crumbled into one of, if not the worst franchise in the league, has to do with their failure to develop a strong farm system. It's baffling to think and realize that the Angels farm system has had perhaps the fewest noteworthy prospects in baseball in the last 10 years. There was Trout, and now they've got Joe Adele, and that's nice, but come on now. They've added Anthony Rendon, but they're literally doing the same thing they did with Hamilton and Pujols. Adding 1 to 2 big money bats is not the answer and it's proven not to work for this franchise. The Angels have laid out the blueprint on how not to run a baseball franchise. These are not opinions, but facts. They've splurged at the wrong time and neglected to build a foundation. It's the opposite of what the Yankees, Dodgers, Red Sox, and Cubs have done. I have said it for years, if the Angels ever took the time to build a strong, thriving farm, they would be a popular and enticing franchise for fans and free agents. I've been to Angel Stadium many times, and I've always enjoyed my experience. It's a nice, clean ballpark that benefits from the amazing SoCal weather. But when it comes to this team and Mike Trout, the leading phrase I continue to repeat is, if only. On March 19th, 2019, it was revealed that Mike Trout has signed a 12-year, $430 million extension with Anaheim. And the question on most fans' minds, even Angel fans' minds, ever since has been, why? Why would Mike Trout want to stay in a place that has shown that they are not dedicated to winning? Why would Mike Trout choose to remain with, in my opinion, is the worst franchise in baseball right now, instead of giving himself the choice to go to New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, or even his childhood favorite team, Philadelphia? I was all but sure he was going to Philly when his contract would expire. In what world does the undisputed best player in any sport stay or sign with one of the worst teams, especially when that team hasn't and isn't showing signs of a brighter future? That is what makes this entire situation completely absurd. The truth is, Mike Trout values loyalty above all, and it's a shame because the Angels organization refused to be loyal to him with improving their franchise. We've felt the sadness of Roy Halladay missing so many prime years playing on abysmal Toronto teams, and we felt hopeless with watching Felix Hernandez literally pitch his entire prime in the baseball abyss that is Seattle. Halladay eventually went to Philly, and Felix at least is still playing ball, albeit way past his prime. Mike Trout, not in the postseason every year, would be like Tom Brady and Michael Jordan being absent yearly from the playoffs throughout their entire career. Just the thought is maddening and Twilight Zone-ish, but this is the ridiculous truth and reality of the Mike Trout situation. Before, the Angels were to blame for imprisoning Mike Trout. Now the hero has become the villain because Mike Trout himself has willingly robbed the world from watching him not only in the postseason, but on good teams and competing against great teams. We'll likely never see Trout in the same lineup as guys like Betts, Judge, Tatis, Rizzo, Freeman, Soto, or Acuna. Baseball itself is robbed. I have the utmost respect for Mike Trout, but let's be real. He did everyone a disservice. It's basically Stockholm Syndrome, and it's the biggest horror thriller of this baseball's age. So again, I say, if only. Now, maybe the Angels would do something no one foresees and rewrite the script of their franchise and build from within. Perhaps they will be smarter, collaborate better with the league when it comes to mutually beneficial trades, and make low-risk, high-reward free agent signings. As we stand today, I've got more faith in Baltimore, building a solid future, than Anaheim, and that's saying a lot. If you're an Angels fan, you hope and you pray that the 2020s will be different from the 2010s. It's entirely possible that Mike Trout will be healthy and still in his prime when Anaheim starts to thrive. But I can't see that right now, and I think that most fans can't see that right now. For the sake of the sport, I hope that Anaheim wakes up sooner rather than later because Mike Trout's staying in Anaheim. And at this point, it's up to the Angels to build a formidable franchise.